A late night talk show host pushed every socialist policy that is actually to blame for the rising housing costs, but blames landlords for the affordable housing crisis. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting video today, and it's going to be on the topic of this guy, John Oliver. Now, apparently, this guy's a late night talk show host. I had no clue who this guy was, but I kept seeing articles and comments on my videos about some segment that this guy did where he just basically trashed landlords, right? So I was like, okay, I'm curious. What is this all about? Well, I watched this video. It's a 20+ minute long video, way too long. He makes some horrible jokes. He paints all landlords as bad people who are just trying to make a whole bunch of money, right? And he never comes up with a solution to any of the problems that won't create more problems, okay? All of the solutions that he's pushing are actually the reasons why the rental costs are so high in a lot of these big cities, okay? He talks about all sorts of nonsense. Every single thing that I talk about on my videos being horrible, awful laws that only hurt landlords and make housing less affordable, well, that's what he thinks is going to solve the problem. More of the same is going to fix the issue. So, I'm absolutely opposed to this. And I can't tell you just how frustrating it is, but the reason I bring this up is because this is the mindset that we're fighting against, okay? This is the socialist mindset that we're fighting against. This kind of person, he's a socialist, pure and simple, okay? When you watch this video, you can see every single one of his solutions is a government intervention, okay? Every one of his solutions is a government control of the private marketplace. And simply put, right, if that is what he's pushing, then he's a socialist. And that's why we can't listen to anything that he says. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Have you seen this segment by this John Oliver? What did you think of it, okay? Do you agree with him on any of his points? I agree with him on a couple of points, right? One, the cost of housing has increased a lot lately. That is a statistical fact, okay? The price of housing has gone up. But I do not agree with him when he blames the landlords, right? Landlords are raising their rents to reflect what is going on in the marketplace. Just like when you go to the grocery store and the price of food has gone up, I don't hear John Oliver saying, oh, well, you know what, it's the fault of the egg producers that, there's a shortage of eggs. No, that is how much we have to charge because there is, that's the supply and demand. Supply and demand. You want us to charge, lower rents than what the market dictates. That doesn't work, okay? That doesn't work anywhere except for in fantasy land. And if you're, all for the government doing 100% takeover of the, rental property business, guess what will happen, okay? That is a push straight towards socialism. And next thing you know, we're going to be in food lines where we're all the 100% dependent on the government. Oh, man, this is some frustrating stuff. So before I get into the article I'm going to read today, I'm going to attempt to play a small clip from his video right now. This might get copyright protected. That's why, I'm not going to be playing very much of it. And I actually have a newspaper article about his video, right? So let's get into it.
So what can we do about it? Well, there are some small things that we could pass. We could pass rent stabilisation laws and laws that prohibit discrimination against recipients of housing choice vouchers and make it easier for landlords to accept them. We could also pass laws mandating the sealing of most eviction records and give people a right to counsel in housing courts. That alone can have massive impacts. In 2017, after sustained pressure, New York City became the first place in the country to give tenants the right to a lawyer in housing courts. It is a major reason why, even before the pandemic moratoriums, residential evictions were down 40%. And luckily, other places are now following that lead. But I would argue, what we really need to do is fundamentally change our mindset away from simply hoping that we can tinker around the edges of housing policy and the private market will sort the rest of this shit out, because we've tried that for decades, and yet, here we are. Instead, we need to agree housing is a human right.
Okay, so you saw that clip. You have a good idea of what this guy is talking about now. So I'm going to get into the article I have for you today, and it's coming from reason.org, and it says, what John Oliver gets wrong about rising rents. And that's actually reason.com. But let's get into this, and they do a great explanation of what he gets wrong. High housing costs are no laughing matter, as John Oliver's latest monologue confirms. On Sunday, the comedian devoted a 22-minute segment of his HBO show Last Week Tonight to the issue of rising rents and all the attendant problems of housing unaffordability and instability that those can cause. Rents are skyrocketing, and that is the last thing you want to hear is on the rise, along with COVID cases, murder rates, and Henry Kissinger's life expectancy, quipped Oliver. You or someone you know may be struggling to find a place right now or being priced out of where you currently live by your landlord. Rising rents are a very real phenomenon driven by a mismatch in many cities between the number of homes that are being built and the number of people who would like to live in them. The wedge between supply and demand is created by cities' elaborate zoning codes, price regulations, and permitting processes that all combine to reduce housing availability and raise prices. Yeah, and that's one fact that this guy, he doesn't seem to understand, okay? He brought up all of, these great, oh yeah, here's a great idea. Rent control, this is a great idea, right? Or eviction protections or free lawyers for tenants during eviction court. But what he doesn't realize, right, and this is the thing, that all of those things, they don't create more housing. They prevent people from being evicted. They make it harder for people to be evicted, right? They help people pay their rent in terms of programs like Section 8, right? But they don't tell developers to actually build more housing. So what they end up with is you end up with the same amount of housing and in a lot of places a rising population, which means that there are less total units available. Not only that, but rent control policies, eviction protections, etc., right? Limiting how much a landlord can make in terms of profit dissuades a lot of people from wanting to be landlords. Okay? I don't want to invest anywhere where there's rent control. And developers don't want to build, a lot of them don't want to build anywhere where there's rent control. So keeping that in mind, there's going to be a lot less units built. There's going to be a lot less total units available, and that will drive the supply down. While the demand, at least even if it stays the same, the demand will, go up because there's less units. There's less units available. So, what do they think is going to happen? Prices are going to go up. This is a natural, cause and effect. And they don't understand that the cause of these issues is their bureaucracy, their ridiculous government interventions. It should be no surprise that rents are high when a majority of land in major cities is off limits to new development. It takes years to approve whatever new housing is allowed, and some of those new units have to be given away at below market rates. The details of these restrictions are a wonky topic, to be sure. One expects only so much depth or insight from a comedic explanation of it all. But even allowing for that handicap, Oliver's treatment of the housing supply issue proves to be superficial, brief, and confused. Oliver either misunderstands or fails to explore the link between government regulation, housing supply, and housing market outcomes. His perfunctory explanation of it serves only as a brief prelude to his attack on the real villains in his story: greedy private landlords with carte blanche to raise rents and evict tenants. Yeah, because that's exactly what we want. We all want to, just raise rents and evict tenants. Well, first of all, when you tell us that we don't have the right to make a profit off of the business that we start, well, you're telling us basically we're in the wrong business. We don't want to be in this business anymore. How many people do you think are going to be landlords when you take away all of their profit incentive and then say, well, housing is a right, so you have to lose money so that you can house these people? Well, I'd just rather not do it, okay? I'm not going to buy any property. I'm not going to rent any of it out. And if that happens, then what do you want? The government to step in and start, being the landlord for everybody? No, that would not work, okay? The government is a horrible landlord. Just look at any of the public housing agencies throughout the country at these big cities. They are a horrible landlord to 99% of them. So you want private people to come in there, put their personal money in and develop new housing. And whether it's high end or low end that's being built, right? What happens is that brings more units on the market. The people who are buying the high end units, they are not, they're going to open up the older units to the lower income people, right? And it'll make all housing less expensive. I mean, they don't seem to understand anything about economics. They don't understand anything about the real estate industry. They don't even understand, human motivation, okay? Human motivation says, hey, we work hard, we invest our money so that we can get a return. So why would a human want to work hard, invest their money, and then not get a return, not get any profit off of it? Like they don't understand that. And the worst thing is when it's a late night host and, this person's sitting here and they're super wealthy, etc., right? And, you got to ask them, like, well, if you're so concerned about it, why don't you buy, property and you rent it out for below market rates so that you can, do your part? And don't evict your tenants, even if they don't pay. You should take Section 8 too. You love the Section 8 vouchers. But, the thing is, they don't want to put their money where their mouth is, okay? They want you to do it. They expect the landlord to be the one to do all of the hard work, to put all of their money up front and then solve this problem. Well, guess what? If you think that's what works, you should do it. Okay. The solutions he puts forward, therefore, have little to do with eliminating needless, harmful regulatory barriers to new supply. Instead, he calls for legally constraining landlords' ability to raise rents and evict tenants, and declaring housing a federally funded, government-provided right. Oliver starts off his segment well enough. And, he talks a little bit about, this guy's segment, etc., right? But, I just wanted to get into the point where people, they watch this stuff, right? A lot of people will watch this and they don't know anything about being a landlord. They don't know the reasons why a lot of landlords don't want to deal with Section 8 tenants. And they don't understand, why we're not taking vouchers, why we do need to be able to evict some tenants, why we can't charge below market rate rents, why we raise the rents in the first place. They seem to think that landlords live in some sort of a bubble where we personally aren't affected at all by inflation, where only the tenants are affected by inflation, right? They lie and they say, hey, well, the tenants aren't allowed to have representation in court. That's 100% lie, okay? Tenants can have a lawyer in court protecting them, but 99% of places are not going to have the government pay for the lawyers for them. That means they have to pay their own lawyers. Okay, they have to pay for their own lawyers out of their own pocket, just like the landlord is. The landlord is paying for the lawyer thousands of dollars in some cases. That's how much I paid when I went through my evictions. I paid thousands of dollars to get these tenants out of these places, okay? And I paid for it out of my pocket. I didn't get any government handouts. And telling me that, we're going to pay for the tenant to have a lawyer, but screw you, Tony, you don't get a lawyer. You're like, that it creates an unfair situation in a civil case, okay? Two parties in a civil case against each other, and the government's going to pay for a lawyer for one of them, and the other one has to pay for a lawyer out of his own pocket. That's how ridiculous this nonsense is. Okay, so John Oliver, you can stick it up your butt because I don't agree with anything that you said.